Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home is the newest title in the Harvest Moon series. Now, right now, it's just releasing on iOS and Android. I think it's possible it could be released on other systems in the future, but as of right now, it's only iOS and Android. If you have been following the Harvest Moon series up to now, maybe you've played the last few games, then the best way that I could describe this game is it's the system of Harvest Moon, The Winds of Anthos, but the gameplay is kind of more like A Light of Hope. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you look at the graphics, you're probably going to be immediately reminded of Harvest Moon, The Winds of Anthos, because some of the characters, some of the graphics, everything looks very similar to The Winds of Anthos. However, as you start playing the game, you're probably going to be more reminded of A Light of Hope as opposed to The Winds of Anthos. Why am I saying that? Well, as you start the game, you're in a really run-down town, and then you're going to have to complete different quests to kind of restore the life of the town. So when you start playing this game, it's going to start off a little bit on the slow side and a little bit on the empty side, but I think it's kind of intentional. It's supposed to be that the town is a little bit lifeless until you come in and you start fixing things up and you slowly rebuild the town with the help of the other villagers. So the basic gameplay loop in this game is, of course, you're on a farm and you're going to complete different quests, and then as you do that, there's going to be more people who move to your town, there's going to be more people who visit your town, you're going to expand your farm, and so on. So now that you know what the game is the game going to be worth your time? Well, I think that really depends on how you value the different parts of farming sims. As we go through today's video, I want to go through the different aspects of Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home. I'm going to talk about what I like and what I don't like. So as you're listening, you can kind of think about what is important to you as you're playing a farming sim, because Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home, I've realized that this game actually does a few things better than some of the old Harvest Moon games, but there are some features that are missing or they've been toned down for this mobile version of Harvest Moon. Let's start by talking about the farming. Now, in this game, the farming, of course, it works like it does in most other farming sims, where you're going to till the soil and plant the seeds. In the beginning, it's going to seem like the farming aspect of this game is exactly the same as it was in the past two Harvest Moon games. However, the longer you play the game, it's actually going to be mixed up in several ways. Now, this is a Harvest Moon game, so of course, there's going to be hybrid crops. And this game works the same way as it did in The Winds of Anthos, in that if you get a hybrid crop, you're actually going to get two crops. So, for example, if you are harvesting sweet potatoes and you get a hybrid, you're going to get a sweet potato and a long sweet potato. So yeah, you don't have to worry if you are harvesting for a quest. You're still going to get the vegetable that you wanted, and you're going to get an additional crop. The longer you play this game, and after you complete some of the main storyline, the farming is actually going to add several levels of complexity. First of all, in this game, there is different quality of the crops. You have 1-star, 2-star, and 3-star, and of course, as the star level goes up, you're going to be able to sell it for more and more, which personally, I actually really like this, because one of my complaints about The Winds of Anthos is that when you were doing farming, you actually didn't really make that much money. But in this game, once you get 3-star crops, you can actually make quite a bit of money through farming. You may be wondering, how do you improve the quality of your crops? Well, this is one thing that I really like about Home Sweet Home, is that there is actually several different ways to do that. First of all, you're going to have different plots, and the different plots, they'll have different levels of quality, and their quality is actually going to change over time. Just like in real life, you can't just keep using the same plot. If you keep using the same plot, then the nutrients in the soil, they're not going to stay really strong. They're going to get weaker and weaker. So you actually are encouraged to switch up which plot you are using, so that way you can get that high quality soil, and then let the soil in other areas rest. You can also use different types of fertilizer, and also to get those hybrid crops, you're going to want to plant the seeds in different seasons. This is actually one aspect of Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home that I think is very good. In terms of farming, I really have to say that each of the consecutive Harvest Moon games has gotten better and better in this aspect. And yeah, I was actually really happy with the farming in this game. In terms of the controls, I also felt like the controls for farming, they're really easy to do on mobile. All you have to do is touch the things, and then you're going to automatically use your hoe or your watering can, or you're going to harvest it. You can also do this thing where you touch and then you slide your finger along, and then your character is just going to do everything in that row. So yeah, for the farming in this game, I think it's a definite step up, and I was really happy with the farming in this game. Next, moving right along on our farm, let's talk about ranching and animals. Now, with animals, it's also going to be the same as with crops. In this game, there are 3 different levels for produce as well. So if you take good care of your cow and you take good care of your chicken, you're going to get higher and higher quality eggs and milk. And yeah, there's much more incentive to be nice to your animals in this game. In terms of selection, of course, there are cows, sheep, chickens, and horses, and along with some other variations of those animals. You can also raise different types of pets on your farm, which I want to talk more about that later in the video because there's something really cool that's related to pets. I have to say that the ranching system in Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home is better than most previous Harvest Moon games, but I don't know if I'd say it does it better than Winds of Anthos because there's no taming system in Home Sweet Home. And I do have to say that I did kind of miss that aspect of the Winds of Anthos as I was playing Home Sweet Home. Taming animals was one of my favorite things in the Winds of Anthos, so the fact that it's not here in this game, it made me just a little bit sad, but yeah, I guess it wouldn't really quite work because, you know, Winds of Anthos, it dealt with a huge open world, whereas in Home Sweet Home, there's no open world. Later in the video, I'm going to be talking about the benefits of the fact that Home Sweet Home doesn't have an open world, but in terms of animals, I do have to say that it hinders the game just ever so slightly because, yeah, we can't tame animals as we could in the Winds of Anthos. That being said, there are still a wide variety of animals, and you're encouraged to treat your animals well to get that higher quality produce. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's just completely a step down from Winds of Anthos, it's kind of a give and a take. Every day when you wake up in Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home, you're going to stretch and then you're going to eat breakfast. And initially I was kind of confused about why you had to see this motion every day. Like, you can choose to skip it, but I just thought it was a little bit weird. I was like, why is he waking up, stretching, and eating every morning? It's a little bit on the weird side of things if you ask me. At first I thought maybe it was just kind of a reference to like Harvest Moon Super Nintendo and Harvest Moon 64, where every day you wake up and then you eat something. But my opinion slowly started to change once I got a pet, because once you get a pet, it's your character stretches, you eat breakfast, and then your pet eats breakfast, and then maybe you're going to read the newspaper, and then your day is going to start. But yeah, I thought that was a really cool little detail, and I'm excited to see how this works the longer you play the game. The next gameplay aspect that we have to talk about is fishing. Now, fishing, it works much the same way as it did in the Winds of Anthos, except instead of using a controller, of course, you're just going to be touching the screen. So for me personally, I did like that it's a little bit simpler in this game to do the fishing, but there is still strategy there, so yeah, I thought the fishing in this game, it was still pretty good. Now, those of you who have been following my channel for a long time, you know that fishing is usually not one of my favorite parts in farming sims, and Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home is not an exception to the rule. Yeah, I didn't really do a whole lot of fishing so far, especially because all the fishing that I did in the early game, it didn't really earn me that much money. So yeah, I kind of dropped fishing for the most part. But yeah, on the whole, I have to say the fishing, it's almost exactly the same as it was in the Winds of Anthos. So in this sense, I wouldn't say that the series has gotten better or worse. It's pretty much just the same, and it hasn't really changed all that much. The next section, we're going to be talking about mining. For me, I didn't unlock mining until I was about 5 hours into the game, which for me, it kind of surprised me a little bit because normally, you know, you can go mining and that's one of your daily things. So yeah, you're probably not going to be able to mine for the first few weeks in Home Sweet Home. The mining in this game, it's also a more simplified version of the mining in the Winds of Anthos. However, I have to say that mining is probably my least favorite part of Home Sweet Home in terms of how it simplified things into mobile. Now, for me, personally, I could not figure out how to avoid these falling rocks. You know, as you're going into the mine, you can still push the radar and you can see where you need to dig. But if you start hitting some of the stones to get some of the ore, you notice that sometimes there's going to be falling rocks. Now, in the Winds of Anthos, you have enough time to run away and then dodge those falling rocks. But for me, I was never fast enough to dodge the rocks in Home Sweet Home. So I don't know if it's just not possible or if I was doing something wrong. But yeah, I tried like touching the screen and, you know, trying to get my character to run away from the rocks, but it was just not happening. That being said, I do have to say that it feels kind of like they have made it a little bit easier maybe to rectify that problem. So yeah, all in all, I think mining is fine, but the rock falling aspect, I don't know. I think they should have just removed that, or they should at least add a way to dodge the falling rocks. Okay, now we've saved the best aspect for last, and the last aspect is the social aspect. First of all, this game does feature some characters from previous games. We have characters from Harvest Moon: The Winds of Anthos, we have characters from Harvest Moon: One World, and we even have characters from Harvest Moon: A Light of Hope. However, just right here, I definitely do have to say that these are not the same characters. They just use the same model and the same character design. I think most of them, their personalities are quite similar to their old personalities, but they also have different tweaks to them. So yeah, I don't know if there's like a multiverse thing going on and this is like a separate reality version of them, or I'm not quite sure what like the concept was, but yeah, these are definitely different characters than the characters that you knew in the past. Just a quick example of that, Brayden, he used to have a goatee and he used to raise animals, but in this game he's actually a carpenter and he doesn't have any facial hair whatsoever. So yeah, everything about these marriage candidates is completely new. So even if you go into this game and you want to marry the same character, maybe you married in a different game, they're actually going to be a completely new character. So yeah, even as you're meeting old friends, you also have to realize that they're actually new people. So new personality, new look, and new backstory. I think a lot of fans, one thing that they've been hard on the Harvest Moon series in the past is the dialogue and the different characters. And I think one of Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home's strengths is that the characters, they have much more interesting dialogue. I think because Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home, it only focuses on one town, they're able to flesh out the different characters in the town a bit better than some of the previous games have. Me personally, I was often surprised at certain lines of dialogue that were kind of funny or interesting, so I definitely have to give Harvest Moon points for that. However, there is a bit too much repeated dialogue, especially when you are on a certain town quest. So how this game works is you're going to be on a town quest, and usually you're going to have to go around and talk to the different people in the town about what you think you should do to solve the town's current problem. And when you're at one of these points, the person is probably going to say the same thing to you again and again until you raise your town level a little bit. For those of you who've played The Winds of Anthos, I do have to say that it is improved from there. It's not going to be like Harvest Moon, The Winds of Anthos, where you're stuck at a town level and then you hear the same person saying the same thing again and again and again 100 times. It's not going to be that bad, but there might be like 4 or 5 days where they say the same thing. So yeah, if you're somebody who really hates repeated dialogue, that's probably still going to bother you a little bit, but I do have to say that in general, there's a lot more dialogue in this game, and also the dialogue is a bit funnier and more interesting. So I definitely have to give Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home some points for that. So what is my final verdict for Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home? Should you get it now? Should you wait for a sale? Or should you just avoid it altogether? I have to say that this really depends on you. If you've liked any of the games from A Light of Hope to The Winds of Anthos, I think you'll definitely find some things that you like in Home Sweet Home. I wouldn't say that this game improves upon every aspect, but it does improve upon some different aspects, and I think this game focuses on the right things. I know a lot of people have said that Harvest Moon, The Winds of Anthos, maybe the world was too big, or maybe there wasn't enough focus on the characters, and I think Home Sweet Home, it focuses on both of those things. You're in a smaller environment, and you're going to interact with the people in the town a lot more than you did in The Winds of Anthos. Also, a lot of the problems that I think people had with previous Harvest Moon games, it's very obvious that they're still working on improving those aspects. So yeah, I think if you enjoyed any of the previous Harvest Moon games, you could definitely jump right in and play Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home. Now, those of you who are still on the fence about the Harvest Moon series as a whole, or maybe you played some of the previous games and weren't the biggest fan of them, then I probably would say that Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home, it isn't quite improved enough to have this be the game that drags you back into the series. Before I end today's video, I do have to say that this review was kind of a little bit more difficult for me as opposed to all my previous reviews for several reasons. Number one, I had to film this footage on my iPhone, which I'd never done before. I definitely had to research how to save videos to my phone of my screen. I also had to mess around with the fact that it's a different resolution. And then I don't know how fair it is to compare this game to The Winds of Anthos. I think because they use the same system and the graphics are so similar, it's really easy to just compare them directly. But I don't really know how fair that is, being that one is on the Switch and other consoles, whereas this game is a mobile title. I think for a mobile title, Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home is actually really, really good. If you're playing this game and you had low expectations because it's a mobile title, I think it'll probably blow those expectations that you had out of the water, because yeah, it kind of just feels like a regular old farming sim that you would play on a console. There are a few different aspects that are toned down a little bit, but yeah, definitely not as much as I was expecting. I also definitely was not expecting some aspects of the game to be improved upon from The Winds of Anthos, so yeah, that was really a pleasant surprise. But yeah, as usual, please let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think of Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home? Don't forget to hit that like button, and I'll see you guys next time.